Welcome everyone. What I wanted to do was, Yusra, just check if please, if you can check if we are streaming now. And Karen and Malik, if you can tell me if you can just see me and not my screen, so I'll know when I'm sharing. Can you see me, Yusra? I mean, Malik?
I see the four of us.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I see. Yeah, that's what I see as well.
Okay. All right. So let's go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to our Advancing Trust in AI's second quarterly event. We have Nick Panay, who's joining us as a guest, and our team members are Karen Jansen, who's the Vice President of Advancing Trust in AI, and Dr. Malik, who is our treasurer. So we are very happy to host this session and talk to you about what the group's motivation was to start addressing this really complex topic of trust in AI. So very quickly, in terms of background, as we all know, AI is heavily associated with the fourth industrial revolution, and that means it's associated with the boundaries that are blurring between digital and cyber and logical and virtual space. And it holds tremendous promise, right? We know that the economic impact of AI is hard to ignore. It's going to be measured in trillions of dollars. And right now, even though consumers are seeing more of the effects of AI, companies and manufacturing, and there is no industry which is not affected by efficiencies and the promise of AI. But a key component of that is how do we utilize the promise, and how do we associate trust with AI so that we can maximize on these on the promise and the profits without bringing in the immense danger that is also lurking and associated, just because there are a lot of different complexities to these really high impact systems. So high impact, high risk, large impact is a perfect combination for holding risk and for a high impact. And the question is, are we addressing these risks, and why do we even care about trust in AI? So how do we learn to trust AI? What is the relation between trust in AI and responsible AI? At a very high level, responsible AI is a practice of designing, developing, and deploying AI with good intentions to empower society and businesses and society at large. And it's an extremely important component to gain trust. So we are going to talk about there are two items on the agenda. We may not have time to get to both of them. And the two items are, the first part of the event was to talk about the private industry perspective on advancing trust in AI. And Karen Jensen would be leading that with Nick Panay. The other part of the event is to talk about cybersecurity challenges of AI, which is a very complex topic, as you can imagine. So I do promise, if we don't get to all of the components there, because it is a large topic, we may have to defer to another event. But Malik, if you wanted to talk about what you see as a cybersecurity challenge of AI, we could start with that and then hand it over to Karen and Nick, so that even if that takes a bit longer, then they can go till the end. We could just start with that.
Yeah, happy to. That works for me. Well, I think challenges, I can perhaps divide them into two categories, right? Number one are, the new attack surface that is introduced by AI. that is different from the attack surface that classical applications have. Obviously, with existing applications, web applications, we have to make sure that we sanitize the input, that the code is not buggy, does not have vulnerabilities, etc. But with AI, what's different, specifically with ML-powered, machine learning-powered AI, is that the input and output now is not the input when the application is running in an operational environment only, but there is some input that happens while training the machine learning model that's embedded in that AI system. So that's a new attack surface. But by poisoning that data does not have high veracity, high accuracy, is not diverse enough, is not balanced, then you end up with a model a machine learning model that may be completely compromised, right? That may act in ways that are not expected. So that's one key challenge that is different from what we're used to. The other challenge is, as we build more, especially with the arrival of deep learning, we are building neural networks that are, more and more complex and that are very obscure. There's no transparency about how that deep learning model is, working, how it's making decisions, etc. So the ML engineers do not understand how it's working, and therefore we cannot secure it because we don't know exactly how it's acting. We cannot accurately predict how it's going to make decisions based on certain input that may come from certain edge cases. So that is another challenge. That's at a high level on the security of AI. But there's another challenge with the use of AI to perform attacks. So adversarial AI. And we're seeing that with many adversaries leveraging artificial intelligence, again, particularly machine learning, to learn about targets automatically through social networking sites or others, to automatically launch these attacks end to end, right? From defining the target to developing the malware to launching the attack and delivering that attack vector. So that is a second area of challenges that we can talk about perhaps another time.
Sure, thank you. So I just want to add a little bit to that. Thank you very much, Malik. That really sums it up very succinctly and beautifully. And it's not an easy topic. So I appreciate that. From my perspective, because I'm 25 years of doing security strategy, and one of the reasons for even starting this group was that we are talking a lot about how to use AI for security purposes, but not giving that much importance of how to build these systems securely. And there aren't any published, there is some guidance and there are some guidelines, but there are no standards. And the problem is we are already deploying these systems, and these are, as I have mentioned, and we all know, massively impactful systems. We're already deploying them. We don't have the luxury of going back and fixing them. I had given a talk on cybersecurity on how to address this in a holistic fashion, because unlike a typical SDLC for a software or a system, a software, you can't just integrate security into the SDLC of AI in the same way you can for conventional systems. So there are added components, as Malik had mentioned, of transparency, for example. That's not something typically you have to build into a SDLC, security SDLC. Or even if there are some components that are common, but we need a different approach. And I had published a framework on how to build these components in an AI system, which includes security and privacy, but also includes integrity of being bias-free, for example, integrity of the algorithms, as well as transparency. So let's reserve that for a different time. In a couple of minutes, I just want to actually one more question, one more point I wanted to make was, in a traditional development life cycle and a traditional development model, we give developers scrub data, or we give them a subset of data. But the nature of AI system and ML systems is such that they have to learn with data. That is, so in essence, we are actually giving them access to what would be a production data, for example. And the more data, that's how these systems learn. For example, by data, right? By accumulating data and by not accumulating data, but by analyzing data. And also, they are different from traditional systems in the sense that it's not an if then else logic, right? Everything is not being created in terms of the code. Some of that behavior that Malik was alluding to, Dr. Malik actually, was alluding to, is the fact that they are making inferences and doing predictive modeling, et cetera. So there are a multitude of differences between your traditional SDLC and ML ops and ML lifecycle. So that requires a different approach, and we really are not at the point yet where this has been standardized, and we need to get there. So that being said, Advancing Trust in AI, we are a WiCyS AI affiliate organization, which means that Women in Cybersecurity is our parent organization. And we are aligned with them in bringing this to the forefront. And also, if you would like to join us, please do reach out to us. The simplest email to reach us at is advancingtrustinai@gmail.com, all one word. And that does forward to a WiCyS email. So with that, and without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Karen and Nick. Thank you. Karen, we can't hear you.
Would help if I unmuted, it would help. Sorry about that. That was a really interesting topic. And Dr. Malik, maybe if we have some time at the end, I would really like if you can, to talk a little bit about the patent that you and your group were recently granted, talking about machine learning. So I think that would be a great thing if we can get some time to that. But for right now, I am Karen Jensen, and as Pam said, I am the Vice President of the WiCyS Trusted AI Affiliate. And it's my pleasure today to introduce our speaker, Nick Penney. Nick is the Chief Marketing Officer for Amelia.com. So good afternoon, Nick. Good morning, wherever you are, welcome. And thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. And I just want to share a quick story about Nick. When I reached out to him, Nick and I do not know each other. And I said, listen, this is what we are. We're the WiCyS Trusted AI Affiliate. We'd like to talk to you about Amelia.com. A lot of people say, well, I'm busy. No, Nick said, sure, no problem. And he has just been a gem all the way along in sharing this information. So I'm really grateful for that. So let me just share my screen and we can get started. Can everybody see that? Everybody see that there? The Amelia.com screen. Did I lose you somewhere?
No, we're here. No, we can see it.
Okay, very good. So Nick, if you could walk us through a little bit and talk about Amelia.com, a little bit about your organization and about your mission.
Absolutely. So again, thanks for having me. A pleasure to speak with you all. So Amelia is the name of the company and also the name of our product. And our product is a conversational AI agent. What does that mean? We are a company that enables machines to communicate the way humans communicate, versus forcing humans to communicate the way machines like to communicate. So we're all about understanding human communication request, intent, what are they trying to get done, understanding what the human is asking for, communicating back the way they like to be communicated to, the way you and I are speaking now, and then turning around and getting done whatever the customer is asking for. We're an enterprise company. We're not a B2C company. We're a B2B company. So our use cases are all about enabling what we call digital employees to work side by side with their human counterparts and help the human counterparts unlock their creativity and do the things that humans do best, while machines take up the slack for things that are best for machines, things that are redundant, rote tasks that humans would rather not do. That's what machines do well for us.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. And there's some important things that you said in there that we'll get into as we move through Amelia's functionality and get a little bit more into Amelia's brain. So if you could share a little bit about yourself and your journey and what kind of led you to ending up at Amelia.com.
Sure. So I'm a marketer. I've been a marketer for longer than I care to admit. So I won't share the number of years, but I've been around for quite a while. My whole career has been in technology firms, mostly in B2B kind of environments. My last role before joining Amelia about 2 years ago was with digital, with a systems integrator, DXC, DXC Technologies, a large systems integrator that basically works with large enterprise customers to solve their technology challenges by taking best-in-breed technologies and bringing them into their business processes. So through that experience, and I spent about 8 years there, I've gotten to know a lot about technology and a lot about enterprise technology. AI was an area that always intrigued me. So when an opportunity came up to join a company that is focused on AI and more specifically on conversational AI, which brings humans and AI kind of together in a symbiotic way, I thought it was very, very interesting space. And I joined the company about 2 years ago. It's been quite a blast. It's been quite a journey. And I think we have a lot more fun ahead of us as the rest of the marketplace starts to kind of morph around us, because it's a relatively new space. So yeah, it's been quite a fun journey so far.
I'm always happy to hear someone who say that their job is fun, because that's not sometimes something that we hear sometimes. So that always encourages me, when someone says that. So now I think we can get more to know a little bit more about Amelia. Sure. And, when we first talked about this, we talked about, what are some talking points for Amelia and some comparison talking points. And I know we are all familiar with chatbots. They're everywhere. And I know for me, my struggle with chatbots is, maybe it's me, I'm asking the wrong questions, but I always seem to be asking the question that the chatbot can't answer. It's somewhat of an FAQ. There are a limited number of responses for the chatbot. And if you just want to know the organizational hours, things like that, that seems to me to be more what's there. So what I always find is, because they have these limited responses, that my issue I always have to go to a live agent and be transferred. And what that does is that adds that X amount of time to my experience to find a solution, because I had to go through kind of almost being pre-screened to be eligible to talk to a live or a human agent. But Amelia is an intelligent virtual agent, an IVA. So if you could talk a little bit more about the differences between IVAs, which is Amelia, and chatbots, and we can learn a little bit more here about the mind of Amelia.
Thanks, Karen. That's a great question. It's actually a good way to describe what digital employees do, or intelligent virtual agents, is to actually contrast them with chatbots. That they couldn't be any more different. And let me explain why, right? And actually, it's interesting in that sometimes they're confused in the marketplace because of how we as consumers experience these things, but they couldn't be any more different. So chatbots, as you described, I think of them as fancy FAQ documents, right? So It's, there's a human behind there or a group of humans that basically sit down and they do a whiteboarding session of some sort. And they say, hey, what kind of questions do we think we're going to get that are coming into the call center or the website? And then they kind of classify those questions, and then they come up with answers to those questions, and then potentially a decision tree that says, well, this answer will potentially lead to this question. And you have kind of mapped out decision tree. And, to the degree that your question matches perfectly whatever those people figured out on the whiteboard, then you're in luck, right? Because then you'll find your answer, right? You're going to flow down the decision tree nice and smooth, and you're going to find your answer. You're going to be having not a human conversation. You're going to be having a selection of menu choices. It's similar to what you get on an IVR or a call center. It's like, are you looking for this? Click on this. Sure, 20 years ago when IVRs came in, and we used to call in and say, click 1 for this and 2 for this and 3 for that. Now it's fancier in that it's a chatbot. And instead of asking you that, you can kind of voice what it is that you want, but it's still classifying you into a decision tree. It's a human programmed artifact, right? Now contrast that where, the machine is in essence classifying you and give you the answer that the humans predicted you want, versus a true digital employee who has comprehension. That's the difference. So the brain of Amelia is actually structured similar to the human brain, with multiple elements that are firing simultaneously to understand and comprehend what the human is asking you for, what the other person in the conversation is asking you for. So it's not about keywords, it's not about classification, it's about understanding the statement. Once the machine understands the statement, and then she's able, we call her she because we personified Amelia, but when she's able to understand that, from there, she can offer a number of answers to your questions or actions that you're trying to get done. And if that's not what you're looking to get done, then she adjusts dynamically. Like the way we speak as humans is messy, right? But it's, it's accent laden like mine, and it's, different ways of articulating things. We pause and we change directions, we change our minds, we change context. Sometimes in the same sentence, I may ask you 3 different questions, since you as the other person have to decipher which one you're going to take first and all of that. So we've designed Amelia to be able to respond to all of that. So I can talk to Amelia and say, I need to check my balance. And before she gets to it, I say, oh, sorry, hold on one second. As a matter of fact, I need to download my latest statement before I check my balance. Can you do that, right? So she'll pause what she was about to do what it is you're asking, and then come back to it. And the way she's able to take action is because she's integrated into enterprise systems on the back end. So that's the main difference, is comprehension versus classification. Amelia is not human programmed. She's trained to understand what the intent is, trained to communicate back and forth with the human, and trained to take action and close the loop with the human. So she's perfect in a number of use cases, including call centers and things of that sort.
Okay. We can just go through, I know the one up here, the episodic memory, and these might necessarily mean something who doesn't have more of a technical background in the AI discipline, but I think there's some things that other people that might resonate with them. So I'm just going to show them briefly in talking about episodic memory. And these are, it's recall, as I understand that, and being able to learn from experiences. And we'll talk a little bit about that more as we get into the digital and the hybrid workplace. So I'm just going to click on a couple of these. You don't necessarily, I might have to unclick on that one.
No, you can click on the next one.
Okay. Maybe, no, she didn't want to talk about that one. She's like us. She said, no, I don't want to do that right now. So then, here we're talking about process memory and dynamically navigating business process flows. So there's that 3-dimensionally. And as I walked through the website and looked at things, and I thought to myself, how do I see this as different from the existing chatbots? the chatbots are basically, like you said, an FAQ that can answer yes and no. And I think of that as a two-dimensional process, a more linear process, whereas what I see in Amelia is much more, obviously the picture itself is much more three-dimensional, much like our brain. Sometimes I don't know, Amelia might have a better brain than I do. So I'm not sure I want to give her too much credit for that. But these are all the things that we recognize in ourselves in terms of collecting information, being able to sort it in all kinds of different ways, recall it when we need to, and apply it to different scenarios as we start to learn. So let's, oh, she doesn't want that one either. So let's the one that she wants, working memory. Obviously, these are not, while they've lent themselves to artificial applications, intelligence applications, these are certainly human brain concepts as well.
Yep. That's the idea. And you see, actually, I'm glad you picked on effective. Effective is one of those areas as well, that as you're communicating with this digital employee, she's actually able to understand, based on your responses, how you're feeling about it at that particular point in time. She's able to understand anger or happiness or satisfaction, based on a number of technologies that lie behind that, right? Just like humans, so, she's able to kind of read your emotions to some degree. She's able to then draw from all these other elements of the brain that you talked about, right? Episodic memory, process memory. Again, keep this in mind that this is designed for business, right? So it's designed to have context as you interact with it, right? So for example, when we build a digital employee for a bank, the learning that she goes through and the processes she's familiar with are specific to banking processes. The things that the bank wants this digital employee to do is very much like a human employee. Like when you get hired to be a teller, you get trained to be a teller. You have context. So somebody asks you something that is only really understood in a retail banking environment, and you'll know what they mean, versus just a random discussion with an Alexa or a Siri, where as consumers, we throw all kinds of things at it and it's able to understand generally what it is you're talking about. Those kind of VAs that are specific to a consumer environment, they don't understand the business context. They're not tied to enterprise systems. So that's the difference as well, as these are innovations that allow businesses to have a much better connection to what the customer needs and what the customer is trying to get done. So you have kind of customer satisfaction increase. Why? Because every time I call Amelia, she never puts me on hold. She always answers. She always has the answer, because guess what? She's software. So I'm able to upload all kinds of knowledge into her brain. She doesn't have to say, hold on, let me look over the cubicle to my other expert, because she's able to kind of comprehend and give you the answers that you need. She never takes breaks, and she's always consistent, right? Every time I call, if I ask the same question with the same context, I'm going to get a consistent answer. So you guys talked earlier, I think Pamela talked about bias-free environments, right? So think about the opportunity, this is one case where actually machines are better than humans, right? Because machines don't have biases unless you build it into them. In this particular case, the learning that we give to our digital assistants is context specific, and it's supervised learning. It's not unsupervised. So you always have the human in the loop at the end of the process that says, yes, this is a process, a business process, and a flow that I would like Amelia to take whenever a customer calls and wants to cancel their credit card. This is in essence the process we want to go through. Again, she has abilities to change context, stop, go back, understand what's happening, and make adjustments, but it's still supervised by humans. It's not free roaming AI. That's a real key part of it.
Right.
And also she interacts and learns from her human counterparts. That's why we call her a digital employee and a digital colleague. Like us, like for example, I'll give you an example. She's in a call center environment. She takes a call. Customer goes through, specific questions. She gives answers. But many times as humans, we go, you know what? I want to speak to a human. Can you just basically, raise this up to your supervisor? I want to speak to a human agent. She says, sure. Let me pass you to a human agent. She passes the call on to a human agent in a call center, but she stays on the line and actually learns from that interaction how the human agent is going to handle it. Because she was stuck before, she wasn't able to kind of handle whatever the person was asking for. She observes the human, understands if that was well done, and then recommends it back to the supervisor. Again, it's supervised learning that says, look, I saw this happen 10 times. Caller comes in, I get stuck, has to be escalated. I take it to human solves it. It happened 10 times. Maybe we should change my process so that I can handle it next time and I don't have to escalate to a human. Right, so that's a combination of learning, real-time learning, but supervised. And the action only takes place if the human says it should take place.
Okay, and as we're talking about this, and now that we know a little bit more about Amelia's brain, and this kind of brings up what you were talking about, which is the digital workforce here. And I think one of the key things that I saw right off, it's right below here, and I'll move down there in a second, that the digital workforce is not a far off trend. It's here today. And that's a direct quote from you guys. And it's kind of been what you've been talking about here and the capabilities of Amelia. So let's talk a little bit more about the digital workforce and how Amelia is more a collaborative AI and more of a hybrid digital employee, which is one of the examples that you said that if there's something that she's not able to perform, then as that call gets moved on to a human subject matter expert, then she participates in that process and is going to standard that. So the next time she gets that call, she's going to give that same repetitive answer. And by repetitive, I don't mean just repeating the same thing. I mean that from a constancy perspective. So if you want to talk a little bit more about some of the things that Amelia works in, something that it really strikes you as how this comes out as being the digital and the hybrid employee. And what does that mean to be a hybrid employee?
Right. Well, that's a great question. By the way you described it, you should join the company. You can represent it better than a lot of people on my team. Even that's fantastic. So, no, you got it right on. So, let me actually start with your last point. She's not a hybrid employee. She's part of the hybrid workforce, and the hybrid workforce is made up of human employees and digital employees. So she is the second part of the equation to enable the hybrid workforce. And when we say hybrid workforce, it's not in the future, it's now, right? What's happening is, for a number of different reasons, right? Companies are looking to have, of course, efficiencies, which is always the case. And they're also looking to keep their employees engaged and happy, right? Because as we know, happy employees and engaged employees make for good customer satisfaction, because you can't have good customer satisfaction without happy employees. So what makes employees happy? Think of us as humans. You talked before about, isn't it great when somebody has fun at their job, right? Everybody should have fun at their job, right? Are there parts of my job that I hate? Sure. Like scheduling meetings or keeping up with 1,000 emails that are not relevant, but I still have to read them to figure out that they're not relevant. There's things in my job that I do that are redundant and really better handled by machines, but are not handled by machines today. So that's what Amelia is here to do. She's here to take from us those redundant menial tasks that machines can do well, so then I can spend more time doing what humans do best: creative thought, consultative work, collaborative work with other humans and so forth. That's where I get more fun out of my job. Same thing with call center agents. I don't know a lot of call center agents that enjoy resetting people's passwords every day.
Right.
It's just not that fun, right?
Right.
So, well, there's a few hundred things like that are not that fun, that are causing call center agents to churn a lot higher than most professions, because they just, first of all, most people call a call center when they're angry about something. It's usually not a happy case scenario. I don't call my company and say, hey, I'm really happy with you guys. I'm usually calling them because I have an issue or a problem. So they're at the receiving end of all kinds of problems. And on top of that, they have to do all these redundant tasks. So the hybrid workforce is all about assigning to digital employees like Amelia the things that machines do best at scale, and letting humans do what they do best, which is, again, creative work and creative thinking and collaborative thinking. That's the real difference. So you mentioned digital workforce.ai. That basically says, even today, you don't have to be a large enterprise to do that.
Right.
You can in essence go hire your new digital employee on the spot. You can interview her, meaning you can actually experience what a digital employee would do in your context, with preset knowledge around banking or IT support or HR support, which is very relevant today. See how she answers those questions. But again, you're interviewing her with basic HR knowledge. She doesn't know your HR department. She doesn't know your company.
Right.
So once you hire her, meaning you download the software, then you're starting to teach her the specifics of your company like you would any human employee. Here's the difference. A human employee takes, I don't know how long to get on-ramped into a company, right?
Right.
It takes us weeks, if not months, to get really proficient in a new company, the culture, the knowledge, the rule books, and all of that. Well, Amelia can learn a little bit faster than that. You can upload a 1,000-page rule book into her brain in a few seconds. And not only does she know it, she doesn't just know the keywords, she knows the context behind the words.
Right. Right.
Right. And she can scale infinitely, right? That's the difference.
Right. And as I kind of moved to a new screen, because you're talking about sort of the next topic is, when we talk about trusted AI and we talk about responsible AI, the majority of time we're talking about ethical policies and practices. And that is certainly a critical aspect of it. But this brought to mind to me, and talking about the democratization of conversational AI, that for many smaller enterprises, like you were talking about, medium enterprises, people that have no AI personnel, no programming, or very limited access, these are high-level skills to build neural networks and machine learning algorithms. So I wanted to bring that to focus, that also a part of trusted and responsible AI that I really hadn't thought of is its availability to a lot of different types of organizations. Maybe to a nonprofit could use Amelia for HR as easily as a large tech company, or a medium size enterprise. So I think that's one of the things that you had started talking about, is lowering those technical barriers to adoption for implementing conversational AI and having accessibility to AI technology to grow your business. So I think that was a good comment there, and something that I'm going forward, I want to be really mindful of, that trusted AI and responsible AI is just as much about accessibility and learning as as ethical practices and policies. So if you have something from here that you think is more, that you want to add to that, we have a couple of more topics, and I want to be mindful of that. But if there's something, the one thing, if you wanted to talk about from here specifically, is that no code solution. And that's part of what lowers that technical barrier, is that ease of adoption. So if you want to sum that up a little bit, I think that would be great.
Yeah, of course. No, those are great. One quick thing before we go there, and that's what we call democratization of AI, and we'll talk about what makes that possible. Dr. Ben Salem mentioned this, and Pamela mentioned. Well, Dr. Ben Salem was talking about the attack surface, the fact that, as part of the training of AI, potentially you're opening yourself up to possibility of attack there. And then I think Pamela was talking about transparency as well. So as you're teaching AI in this context, in a B2B environment, it's very important to have full transparency. So you minimize that attack surface, right? So it's not unsupervised learning, as we talked about before, is you as the employer of this digital employee have full control of what parts of learning you want her to consume into her brain and at what time and so forth. So you have full control of that. So it definitely really supports the premise of what you were saying in responsible and ethical AI. And again, think of it as even in HR, right? Yeah, you can potentially use a digital HR assistant to do some of the front end screening of resumes and so forth, totally bias free. Whereas humans, you can never guarantee that they're going to be bias free as they're looking at a resume. It could be a part of the name that kind of gets them to take action that wouldn't be taken before. It could be that the age, it could be something that they look at. Machine doesn't have biases unless you build it in. So if you basically allow the machine to do the screening, you'll be okay. Now, back to your point about digital workforce.ai, democratize and no code, low code. Democratization of AI basically means, look, we've reached a point where we all realize how important this is, right? And how amazing it would be if digital employees work side by side with human employees to unlock creativity, develop, create business value. We get all of that. But, there's a constraint, and that is, but, I, as a small business, medium-sized business, don't have the wherewithal or the conversational AI experts or the AI developers to go teach Amelia my stuff to know my business, right? How do I get started? Well, now we have a platform we call Digital Employee Builder. So Deb meets Amelia in this case. So Deb, or Digital Employee Builder, is our no-code platform that in essence allows customers to eliminate the requirement to have AI developers on staff. Why?
Right.
Because usually, if you think about it, usually when it's almost like writing software, you write software, you have somebody who knows the domain, the business process, the function. You have a developer. The business function expert basically says to the developer, here's what it is to be a good teller for a bank, right? That developer then codes it, and then you put it out in the marketplace. The developer is the one that knows how to take understanding and knowledge and turn it into computer code. That part is now eliminated in that we allow the functional expert, the person who knows the business process of the function, to actually use AI to build AI. So that functional expert can use Amelia with speech, with voice, and say, okay, here's what I'm trying to build. I'm trying to build this use case. The utterance would be this, and the business process would be that. Amelia understands what he's asking for and actually builds the code for him. So that way you eliminate the need for developers. That's what allows for democratization of AI, because you no longer have to have technical resources that would allow you to develop your own use case. You can use AI to build AI.
Yeah, and I think that's the part, and I switched to that screen about the roles of citizen developers, that as these non-tech people are looking at the application, they can have an interaction with Amelia where Amelia can learn more about what the business is, how it's related to specific businesses, and that creates this citizen developer. It's kind of like the roles of citizen scientists, where you need these use cases. You need a lot of data. The better data that you have, then the better able that the application is going to be able to learn and integrate and look at different scenarios and remember, and all of those things that all of us do as we grow in our careers. Then that's what we all do. My career is based on at least 900 years of knowledge. So, but that's when I started out, much the same as Amelia. Then I didn't know all those things, and I had to go through these processes. And I wish I'd had a citizen developer, that I could have worked with to do that. So I think that's a super interesting application of having end users who are non-technical people be able to make contributions and get that sense of intuitive development and interactive development from the use that they've determined they want to have Amelia for. So this
No,
is
you're spot on.
right. Go ahead.
No,
I'm
you're
sorry.
spot on. Yeah, no, I was going to say, Karen, you're spot on. And I would say, imagine the possibilities now when we have citizen developers. Imagine now the ability to take what I call the long tail of jobs and tasks and create digital assistants for them. For what do I mean by that? Like, for example, there's somebody somewhere in, Sweden who is an expert in Swedish, business law of some sort.
Right.
Highly unlikely that they're going to be the kind of, entity that's going to go hire developers to build a digital AI agent to go support them. But with this kind of situation where that citizen developer can enable a digital twin or a digital employee who's going to work with them, that knowledge is imparted on the digital employee. She then serves the customer up to a certain point with knowledge and information. And when the customer is ready to engage, whether it's to sign up with this entity or to build a stronger business relationship, then you escalate that to a human, and the human takes the relationship part and builds a human to human relationship. But imagine philosophy tutors and teaching assistants and
Right.
calculus tutors and all of those things that digital assistants can do. We just have to impart the knowledge. And now that we've eliminated the need for a developer, it goes straight from the brain of the subject matter expert into the brain of the digital employee.
Very important, Nick. This is, I mean, we could really, I know I could talk about this all day, but I just wanted to bring one final topic. And, as far with a lot of the information we get from WiCyS, we are making progress for having a more diverse candidacy and candidates in STEM fields. And certainly women in cybersecurity has made an impact on that. And what really drew me is that your initiative, Amelia's initiative for women in AI, building and changing the industry's future. So if you could just share a little bit about why your organization decided to do that and what the mission is and how people that might have candidates might go out here and be able to either contact candidates or become candidates themselves.
No, that's great. I'm sure. I'm glad you brought it up. We did it because we looked around and realized that there are far too few women scientists, engineers, AI experts that are known. And we knew better that there's plenty of them out there. It's just their stories are not being told. And this is a male-dominated field, technology in general.
Right.
And AI is not different. So what we want to do, I think we as the bigger we as a society, we want to make sure that we represent appropriately the talent that is there. So we want to make sure we give a platform for women in AI to be more visible. And B, we want to correct the imbalance, do our little part to basically say, there's nothing inherent, there's no inherent reason why more women should not be in AI or in technology in general. It's just, it's an artifact of past imbalances that we find ourselves in. So we wanted to make sure that we do our little part. We came across many fantastic scientists and very thoughtful, smart women that we wanted to highlight. And it started to become more of a thing. And now as we go looking really for more women, we find them easier and easier.
Right.
I'm glad you brought that up. And actually, hopefully this venue gives an opportunity to any women out there who are, part of the AI community, to let us know if they'd like to be showcased here. You don't have to be a customer. You don't have to be a past customer, present or future customer, or a partner for that matter. We just want to highlight great women scientists and women, really innovators in the AI space. That's all. So thanks for
this
bringing
is
it up.
great, Nick. As I'm kind of scrolling down, I hope that the audience can see. I'm barely halfway through. So, this is not 3 women, and this is women from all over the world with all different kinds of background. So yeah. I think this is something that's very important. And
And if you
It's
click
not
on
a, it's
any
not a
one of
little
them,
effort, not at all.
no,
It's a very good effort and a
no,
very
no,
important one.
no, I appreciate you saying that because we actually
Yes.
do spend the time not just to take their information and publish it. So if you click on every one, you'll see we actually had in-depth interviews with each one of these women and wrote a piece on each one of them, giving them the platform with their voice in their words. And in some cases we have video as well. In some cases it's just a written interview. But this is definitely more than like a book, a directory of women in AI. This is a lot more
Exactly.
about making
Okay.
their stories,
And
making
I'm
their
looking
stories.
forward to going through these and learning some of these stories from some of these women, incredible women from around the world. So, Nick, I could talk to you all day, but for now, maybe we'll save that for another time. We're so appreciative that you were able to come and talk about Amelia and clarify some things. I know that some people have some terrible fears about AI. Some people just don't know what it is. So I'm glad, and I hope that we were able to clear some of these things up. And as I'm going to turn this back over shortly to Pam and to Dr. Malik, and they can finish up. But if there's things out there that chat, if we can't get to them today, hopefully we'll be able to publish something about some of the questions that the audience may have had. Thanks again, Nick. It's been such a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you so much, Karen. And by the way, all three of you ladies have an open invitation to participate in Women in AI. So please
great.
consider it. Okay,
Thank you
thank
so
you so
much,
much.
Nick.
Thank
Look
you very
forward
much.
to talking to you soon.
Have a good rest of the conference. Thank you.
Thank you. Pam, do I need to, do you have that the control back, or do you need something?
I'm not being able to start the video.
We're having that same problem again, huh? Okay.
So that's fine.
Well, maybe if I stop mine, how about that? No?
No. We had a restreaming problem too, so it did not go on live. And then on LinkedIn, so Yusra and I had been conversing in the background trying to get the video started again, but we have this recording from Zoom, so I'll just post that on LinkedIn. I think in the interest of time then, and the fact that we are not going live on LinkedIn, I think this may be a good time to stop. And also I had posted the email address in the chat for anyone who wants to join. And as I mentioned in the beginning, that we probably won't have time to go into all the details of cybersecurity realm and the challenges for AI. So we'll do a follow-up session. We'll do another session specifically on that, Dr. Malik and I, and anyone else who is, we are able to join in for that particular topic, which would be on, and we will get back to you on the exact area of cybersecurity, because that's a large field. It's by itself.
Right, right.
Even just cybersecurity is not enough for building trust in AI. So let me just talk. I think we are still able to share the screen. The video is having issues. So let me see if I can just share my screen really quick and show the presentation on, not presentation, but the women in trusted AI constituents of the Alpha group. So give me 1 second. I'm just going to start the slideshow from current slide. Okay, so as we are ending this session, really thank you, Karen, and thank you, Nick. That was a very, very interesting session, and I think our first private industry interview to look into the behind the scenes as to the rationale and some of the usage of automation and the value that AI brings. As we end, I'd like to just talk about some of the factors we talked about building trust in AI from our perspective. That includes the following. which is somehow, okay, somehow it doesn't go to slideshow in a Zoom call, which is going live, but these are the elements that we have been working towards in our conversations and our focus. Our focus is on having conversations, driving conversations and awareness around these topics you see on the screen, which is security, privacy, ethics, governance, audit, compliance, transparency, empathy, and also how do you take these words and make it into an actionable paradigm for building trust in AI. So that's our mission. We are highly appreciative of you joining us today, and also invite you to join us as ambassadors, or and by that taking an active role in spreading the word around the risks and the value that we can bring to the larger development efforts around AI and implementation, as well as if you just want to be on the mailing list, so you are attending our events, that's fine too. But with that, I'd like to end today's session. Dr. Malik, would you like to add something, or are you?
Oh, you summarized it well, Pam. Thanks for everybody for your attendance, and we look forward to meeting you in our next session.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Okay. Stop sharing, and we are done.